Stop me if you've heard this one before. A group of young adults travel around in a van together solving mysteries that usually involve suspected ghosts or monsters. No, it's not Scooby-Doo. It's the channel formerly known as the WB's Dead Last. Premiering in August of 2001, Dead Last follows an upstart band of three after they accidentally discover an amulet that lets them see and talk to ghosts, and are now tasked with, begrudgingly, helping resolve these ghosts' last wishes or grudges to help them pass on to the other side. The group now must balance life as a band with a manager that doesn't believe them with this supernatural important task.
Yeah, I don't want to know anything.
Dead Last is a really fun comedy drama with defined characters that all play off each other naturally. It has that feeling of playful angst so commonly found in shows around this time.
I'm CIA. We've known about it for years. In fact, we even tried to change some of our agents into ghosts. Bang Bang, Operation Spook.
Is that why you're a ghost?
Oh, that's classified, Pally.
It's not classified anymore because you're dead and your employer is fascist and obsolete.
Wanna be rebels because that's what's cool and hip at the time, but ultimately just dorks with a moral compass and no real direction at the end of the day. The show follows Scott, Vaughn, and Jane, the plunky punk rocker, the smooth douchebag, and the voice of reason. This job of helping ghosts once you find the amulet is something you're supposed to dedicate your life to, but these young adults just want to make it as a band. The lack of care they have for the task, but the effort they put into it just so ghosts will leave them alone, makes a hilarious contrast throughout the season. Of the cast, the most popular to come out of the show was Tyler Labine. He was invited to the show after being turned down for a part in an untitled project for Nikki Cox, also from WB, but had impressed some other producers there. Which was fitting for Labine, as he has a fondness for this type of story, with other shows he was involved in being Reaper, Deadbeat, and the movie Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, all sharing similar concepts. Dead Last has a lot of fun with its premise and doesn't fall into tropes of the genre as often as I expected. Instead, it plays with it and uses a good amount of ideas I haven't seen before regarding ghosts. Like the idea that if recently deceased, the smell of the decaying body will stay with the ghost and stink up the place it's haunting. It does have a lot of the frameworks of Scooby-Doo though, and I think the comparison is important because I'd be willing to bet it was intentional. If we look at the trends in TV at this time, this kind of deconstructing and playful jabs at your own properties was actually pretty popular. Adult Swim was doing a similar thing with a lot of its Hanna-Barbera catalog and did it best and most famously with Space Ghost Coast to Coast, which can heavily be argued and has been argued started this trend in 1994. Similarly, there was Fox with Greg the Bunny sending up poetry and Muppets, Cartoon Network and Mega XLR with Japanese mega anime, the Flintstones.
What the? Betty, this remote's a piece of shit.
Easy, Barney.
The Partridge Family attempted reboot, and so many more examples. This is before even mentioning the internet culture starting to form around this idea in the days of message boards. Dead Last was from Warner Brothers, who owned Scooby-Doo as one of its many properties, made for its now long-gone channel, the WB. It follows the same spirit of Scooby-Doo, but with a more realistic, edgier interpretation, and sends up some of its tropes.
That is a beautiful piece of road equipment.
This is an interesting phenomenon that I think really only could have happened in the early 2000s. The new millennium was just coming off the 90s, which already saw a big rise in grunge rock, activism, and rebellious attitudes among the young in response to current events. People were angry. This attitude carried into the next century and really capped at this time. Punk rock and alternative rock in general, popularity reached its peak in these years before falling off in favor of rap and a resurgence of R&B in 2003 onwards, with artists like Usher, 50 Cent, now solo act Beyonce, and many more rising and taking up more of the chart spots on the Billboard's Top 100. These rebellious messages were resonating with youth everywhere, so what was one way to do it in TV without looking like they're out of touch with the young adults and tweens? Well, hey. Many networks have well-known properties with a good history that have, at this point in time, more or less fallen off popular culture because of how it was mishandled for years. If people hadn't forgotten about those by now, they're certainly tired of them, so let's tell them, hey, we are too. And so these deconstructions and semi-parodies rose up. A lot of these rose out of resourcefulness and brought us stuff we hadn't seen before, many of them in good fun, simply trying to cut costs reusing ideas or assets. The concepts of these shows were largely predicated on sarcasm and a dash of cynicism, however, which is why I feel this trend came to an abrupt end in 2001. September 11, 2001 was a horrific attack on the Twin Towers. Entertainment, especially whimsical and wacky, was not something people were in the mood for at all following the tragedy. Many movies and TV shows suffered because of this, including Dead Last. There was a large emphasis on community and helping your fellow man after the tragic events. The F the man, whatever dude attitude of shows like Dead Last became dated almost overnight in the pop media for the rest of the year after 9/11. These attitudes would come back with a vengeance in a few months as the dust settled, but too late for this show. More directly than that, however, Dead Last premiered on TV literally only weeks before the attacks took place. And one of those episodes involved Scotty having to hijack a plane to help a ghost pass on. The week before 9/11.
Hey! Stay back! Get back! I'll kill her! I'm gonna kill her! I'm gonna kill her! Stay back! Get her! Everybody sit down! Come on, you! Get in the back! Get in the back!
Look at this! This was played for laughs in the episode. You could not get away with this today. Sure, nobody could have predicted what would happen, but there goes 1/10 of your season never able to be shown on TV again, and possibly leaving a poor taste in the mouth of the very few who did see it. Those low number of people watching it were ultimately the real reason for this show's cancellation after one season. Ask around and you will assuredly get no response of people remembering this show. There's no cult, there's no following. It aired on the WB, an already fledgling small, failing channel, and wasn't even among the popular shows on that network. There was never going to be a saving grace for this show, which is a shame because my viewing of it was charming and left me wanting to see more of the characters. The show stopped airing on September 25th, 2001, with only 6 episodes of its filmed 13 aired on TV. A pitifully small run, with the date it was pulled off the air emphasizing how much 9/11 impacted the final decision. It was just not the right climate for this show at the time. Dead Last is not gone without its contributions to its network though, however admittedly small they may be. The WB eventually merged with UPN, another small failing channel to become the CW. The CW is a fairly large channel still around today and has done much better than its 2 predecessors ever did. Propped up largely by its hip teen dramas like iZombie, Vampire Diaries, Smallville, and so many more, we can already see the tropes and themes that the CW loves to use so much here in this show. The young adult angst, the dramatic romance and sexual tension, the rebellious kids that are too cool for school, the hip contemporary music, the attitude, it's all present here. It took a while of experimenting with wacky sitcoms and spicy thrillers for the network to hit its stride and realize it had something with teen dramas. But once they struck gold, they never looked back. One Tree Hill, Gossip Girl, Smallville, Buffy, the list goes on. While deconstruction, paying tribute, and parodies will always exist within media, I thought this was an interesting small period in time to highlight where so many seem to come out in rapid succession, and with a largely forgotten show that could use a little more love. Dead Last never even had a DVD released. I'm sorry for the quality of the clips in this video, but that's all there is available. Speaking of, see? Not everything was guaranteed a home video release, and to be honest, today is nothing even guaranteed to be on streaming services either, despite how many there are. Dead Last isn't. Luckily, thanks to the internet, things can now be archived by fans. You can find episodes easily enough with a Google search, but they're in terrible quality because they are broadcast rips. The show was aired in its entirety on YTV in Canada, but with the music that was licensed for this show, it's likely that these low-quality rips will sadly always be the best preservation of it available to us. The cost to renew some of the music used in this show for a DVD release probably cost far more than this show was ever worth in the eyes of the executives. And even if it did miraculously get that DVD, the music would be replaced, giving off a very different tone. We already see an example of this with the Birds of Prey Season 1 DVD that WB also released. But ultimately, the biggest hurdle for some kind of official release at all for Dead Last is that no one remembers it. I find it really was just a victim of timing. The show itself is good and doesn't have anything that makes it unwatchable from what I saw. It's ripe for rediscovery. Give it a Google if you're bored. It's a shame it had to come in dead last on its network.
Okay, we've sunk to a new low.
I'm sorry, even Tyler Labine has already said how critics made that joke back then. I'm sorry Tyler Labine. Thanks for watching.
We're gonna play a song for you now. It's called... You're gonna take me to the state line or what? And it's called We Will Take You to the State Line as soon as we finish the show, okay?
I say.
Thank you.
Enough of this crap. We're gonna play or what?
Hell yeah. Listen there, buddy.
2, 3, 4.